Welcome to Module 5, Lesson 18. So, this entire lesson is still with fractions, and more so being able to tell the different sizings of fractions. So it is, I can compare fractions and whole numbers on a number line. We've kind of been doing this already. We've already been able to say that, oh, here's a number line between 0 and 1. And I'm going to say, well, if I was in fifths, if this was, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. Not drawn perfectly, but we'll deal with it right now. I can label all of these 0/5, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and then 5/5. And I could ask you the question of what is larger? Is 3/5 larger than 4/5, or is 4/5 larger than 3/5? And you'd make the alligator mouth go towards the 4/5 because it is farther down the line, it is farther away from 0, so it is the larger number. It's here, well, 3/5 is right there. We can do this. We can do this with whole numbers as well. Let's say I'm dealing with halves. I have 0, make that a little longer. This is 0, 1, and 2. If I'm in halves, this would be 0 halves, 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, and 4 halves. And if I asked you what's bigger, 1 or 3 halves, well, go down the line. 1's here, 3 halves is over there, so 3 halves is greater than 1. You can do this continuously. But I just did something a little unique there. This 1 could also be replaced with a 2/2, which means 1. But we can run into a problem here. Comparing fractions to different fractions when their unit fraction is the same, a third compared to some other third, a fifth compared to some other fifth, a sixth to some other sixth, we're usually pretty good at figuring those out. Usually the larger number on the top is the one that is larger. But we can run into problems with this. What happens when I look at two fractions that are in different units and ask which one's bigger now? 1/2 or 1/5? For this, we should already know the answer to this. If I had an entire line here and an entire line here, the first one cut in half, this one cut into fifths, so 2, 3, 4, 5, we know that 1/2 is greater than 1/5. But what happens if I do this? Change that to 4/5. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now which is bigger, 1/2 or 4/5? 4/5 is larger. And so now it would be like that. But what if I did this now? What if I changed this to a 3? Now remember, the bottom number, the denominator, tells you how many pieces a whole is cut into. It takes 2 pieces to make one whole. It takes 5 pieces to make one whole. But didn't I also just say that with the top, the one with the largest number is the biggest, right? That only works if they're in the same units. That only works if the bottom number, if the denominator is on both of them 3, or if they're both 4s or 6s or a millions. You get the idea. The denominator has to be the same in order for that to work. Because I'm telling you right now, 3/2 is greater than 4/5. Well, Mr. Luthy, how do you know that? I'm confused. I don't understand what's going on here. Well, 4/5 is from here to here, right? 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, right? Is it one whole? This is 0 to 1, 0 to 1. That's not one whole yet. But 3/2. 1/2, 2/2, 3/2 is off the side. So which one's farther? 3/2, which means 3/2 is greater than 4/5. Now, this is what we're doing in today's lesson. Now, one of the best ways of doing this is to visualize it as 2 separate lines. But that's not always going to be an option. On problem sets, on homework, on exit tickets, it's going to ask you to do these on the same line. You might look, well, how am I supposed to do that, Mr. Luthy? That's too hard. And I'll give you, it's going to be a little trickier. But I can show you this exact same problem on one number line. I will use multi-colors to help you see this. But I'm going to make a number line that is from here to there. I already know, I've already done part of this, so I know it doesn't go larger than 2. So I'm going to have this be 0, 1, and 2. I will go ahead and take my green marker, and I'm going to have that be my halves. So wherever there's a green mark, that is 1/2. So right here, I'm going to put at the top right there because it is also one hole, but it's also that. Hopefully you guys can tell that that's green. If not, bear with me. You'll be able to tell the red for sure. And then right there. Now I'm going to close that one up. I'm going to grab the red marker, and I'm going to do fifths. So I'm going to pretend like those green marks are not there. It's like I don't see them. They do not exist. They're not there. So I'm going to just do this from 0 to 1 and cut that into fifths. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2. Oop, I almost counted the green one. Am I counting the green one right now? No, only the red ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And do the same thing here. And you even get a pattern here. There's 2 on this side, and then there's 2 on that side. Now, that actually is not a very good visual representation. Let me make it a little bit more accurate. There we go. And let me fill in these lines just to smooth it out a little bit. Now remember, that's black. Green is halves. Red is fifths. Now, I need to use both these markers to now find 3 halves. Now, when I'm doing 3 halves, do I look at the red marks? No, I don't see them. I ignore them. They're not there. So I only use the green ones. So 1/2, 2/2, 3/2. So I'm going to mark that up, put a line right there. So that is 3 halves. I'm going to label it. Now, I'm going to close this one up. Grab the red one now. Since I'm on red, I'm doing fifths, so I only count the fifths. So I go 1/5, 2/5. I don't look at this one because that one's not what I'm looking at. 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. Ooh, 4/5 is right there. And that is 4/5. Which one is farther to the right? Which one's the larger number? 3 halves. Now, to be fair, you're probably not going to always have expo markers or color pencils to help you solve this problem. So I'm going to give you a big way of doing this. I am going to completely start over now and do it again all in my black expo marker. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How are you going to be able to tell anything, Mr. Luthi? How are you going to be able to tell the difference between a 1/4 and a 1/2 marking? Good question. Let's go ahead and find out. So let's start out with halves. So find that halfway mark. There's another 1/2 and then an additional 1/2. Before I move on to the fifths, I'm labeling these now. This spot is 0 halves. This is 1/2. This is 2 halves. This is 3 halves. And this is 4 halves. That is not a one, that is just in the marker. Now, if I put other things on this board, I now know what this is without the colors. I can instantly see the line here is that. I have already labeled it, so now I can continue. Let's do fifths now. So cutting this up, ignoring this spot, and do it into fifths. So from here to the 1, so 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 hole, and then do the same pattern over there. Now there's a lot of lines, right? There are a lot of lines going on here, and that's okay. I'm pretending that I do not see the halves right now. And other than the fact that knowing that there are some of them already labeled. I pay attention to the fact that I don't label this one again. But wait, scholars, this is already 0 halves. Can I also label that 0 fifths? Yes, it's the same thing. Now this is 1/5, 2/5. That's already labeled. 3/5, 4/5. This is also 5/5, 6/5, 7/5. Nothing where it goes there. 8/5, 9/5, and then 10. Oop, board shaking a lot. 10 fifths. There we go. Now it's labeled here. Now I can compare it. 3/2 is right here. 4/5 is right there. I can still tell 3/2 is farther along. Now, there are some scenarios where there will be overlap. And let me show you an example here. Because 0, 0/2 and 0/5 is the same thing. 1, 2/2 and 5/5 is the same thing. 2, 4/2 and 10/5 are the same thing. You can have this happen more often. Let me go ahead and give you one example here. Let's change these numbers up. I'll keep halves. I will say, you know what? Let's keep it 3/2 just for fun. And I'm going to say the one over here is going to be, let's say, you know what? Let's change this to 2/2. Let's change this one over to 5/4. 5/4. So I'm going to draw my line. 0, 1, 2. Let's do the halves first. 0, 1/2, 2/2, 3/2, 4/2. Label those as such. 0/2, 1/2, 2/2, 3/2, and 4/2. And now going to 4. So remember, I'm not doing the top number yet. Granted, I've technically already labeled it. So if you wanted to, you could be like, that's where that one is. But now I'm going to cut it into 4ths. Remember, ignoring that for this right now, I need to cut this into 4 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It landed on the same spot. Is that okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. If it lands on the same spot, it lands on the same spot. So let's label, well, actually, let's finish all the way. Label that one as well. 0/2 is the same thing as 0/4. This is 1/4. This one would be 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and then 8/4. 5/4 is right here. So 5/4 is greater than 2/2. So there's overlap. Some fractions are equal to other fractions in certain scenarios. 1/2 is the same thing as 2/4. And there's a little cheat you can do this to figure this out. How many ones do you need to get to 2? 1, 2. You need 2. How many 2's do you need to get to 4? 2, 4. You need 2. So they're the same thing. You have 2 2's. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Over here as well, look at the 6 compared to the 3. It doubles, and the 2 doubles as well. If you could basically subtract the same thing from the top and the bottom and get a different fraction, that's the same thing. I'll give you an example in here. So that's going that. So I can also say that 9. Actually, let me give you another one because my brain kind of stopped working there for a second. I'm not going to lie. This one over here, 4/5, and ooh, why did I should not put a 5th there. My bad. I just realized I made a mistake. 2, 4, 4/2, 8/4. That's also equal to 5 or 10/5 or 50 25ths or 100 50ths. There is a pattern here. Not going to go into that too much detail here because it's not the main purpose of this lesson, but I'm still giving the example nonetheless, just in case that might give you a little, oh, there's a little thing there. So this is a lot to take in, but the biggest thing is if you need to, create 2 separate lines and then merge them together. If doing them at the same time is a little confusing, do 2 different ones and then put them together. So hopefully you got some of this. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing, and I hope to see you guys all in the next video. Have a good day. See ya.